So I make that 7:30. Hello and good evening, everyone. My name is Simon and I'm going to be your host for the next 40 minutes or so. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about the importance of gut health, and I'm going to introduce you to your microbiome. I'm going to touch on how stress can affect your health and some of the things that you can do to alleviate it. We'll also discover the great science of nutrigenetics and how it can help you take the guesswork out of getting fit and healthy. Then we'll round off by touching on what many people call the gut pollution solution, the Purify program. So let's jump in and get familiar with our gut microbiome. So more than 2,000 years ago, Hippocrates, the father of modern medicine, suggested that all disease begins in the gut. Well, though he was incorrect in suggesting that all disease begins in your gut, evidence does show that many chronic metabolic diseases do. Your gut bacteria and the integrity of your gut lining strongly affect your health. And according to numerous studies, undesirable bacterial products called endotoxins can sometimes leak through your gut lining and enter your bloodstream. Your immune system then recognizes these foreign molecules and attacks them, resulting in chronic inflammation. So even after 2,000 years, Hippocrates is still someone worth listening to. Now, we've all heard the phrase, "You are what you eat," but actually that's not quite right. It should be, "You are what you absorb." We can compare it to reading a book. If we absorb nothing from the book, then it has added nothing to our collective wisdom. But if we read about things that we're interested in, and then we absorb knowledge that affects us, just like food provides nutrition that we absorb, which affects our systems, both positively and negatively, depending upon what we eat and what we absorb. This list represents just some of the common ailments that people struggle with every day. I'm sure that you have either suffered from one or more of these at some time or know someone that has. And all of these things have some reference back to the health of our gut microbiome. So let's talk about that. The microbiome is the name for all of the genetic microbes, the bacteria, the fungi, the protozoa, and the viruses that live on us and inside us. There are over 10,000 different species so far discovered by scientists, and the largest collection exists in our gut. A good way to look at the role that your gut microbiome plays is to think of a tree. When the roots, your gut microbiome in this case, are not nourished correctly, then the tree as a whole cannot function at its best. But if you provide the right nourishment, then the roots begin to function to their optimal capacity, and then the tree looks and functions at its best, just like you and your gut microbiome. Our microbiome is made up of symbionts, the good guys, and pathobionts, the bad guys. And it's important to have the right balance between the two. We actually need both in the right quantities. Optimally, we should aim to have about 85% good guys and about 15% bad guys. And if we have the wrong ratio, then we experience what's known as gut dysbiosis, or imbalance of the gut. Having the right balance is absolutely critical for optimal health, as our microbiome affects so many aspects of our lives. For example, our mood. Are you aware that 90% of the serotonin, aka the happy hormone, is manufactured in your gut? Perhaps you have trouble sleeping. That could be due to a shortage of melatonin, the darkness hormone, which encourages good sleep, again produced in the gut. We will touch on stress and burnout later in this talk. But suffice to say that dopamine, the motivation hormone, oxytocin, which looks after love, trust, and self-esteem, and noradrenaline, which gives you your get up and go, are all produced mainly in the gut when it's in the right balance. Add to that food cravings, weight management, digestion and metabolism, brain health, fertility, and so many other things. You can see how important it is to have a balanced gut microbiome. So what can affect our gut microbiome? Well, we'll touch on some of these areas in more detail in a moment, but as you can see, there are a range of things, some of which are easier to affect than others. And a good way to look at it is to think of a continuum. with poorest health at one end and optimal health at the other. We're all traveling along this path, and the choices we make and the environment we live in affect the direction of travel. Each individual action that we may take may not in itself push us very far, but the continued choices repeated over time determine the overall speed and direction. So let's look at some of the main causes to microbiome imbalance. Of course, diet is a major factor. Remember, we are what we absorb, but it's not as simple as just saying, don't eat this and do eat that. Over the last 50 years, we have, as consumers, demanded our foods be provided to us in easier, long-lasting, more colourful ways. And that has had an impact on the nutrition of the foods we consume today. That burger, for example, was made to look healthy, but is it? Our desire to keep food shelf stable for longer, to look more appetizing, to have low fat or low sugar alternatives, has meant that we have moved from food which pretty much did what it said on the box to something else entirely. We have sacrificed good quality nutrition for ease and convenience. Now, we can blame the manufacturers to an extent, but ultimately they're delivering what we as consumers are demanding. Also, another trait of our European-centric diet is that we have, by and large, a diet that is low in fermented foods, which are an excellent source of nutrition to help rebalance your gut microbiome. Another area that affects our health is the environment around us. With the current lockdown and restrictions on global travel, it's actually getting better at the moment, but it's only a matter of time before we see this picture again. And whilst there are aspects of environmental pollution that we can affect through education and changing mindsets, I want to touch on one aspect: persistent organic pollutants, or POPs. POPs can play a significant negative effect on human health and the environment. We are exposed to POPs in a variety of ways, mainly through the food we eat, but also through the air we breathe and the many products used in our daily lives, which have added POPs to improve certain product characteristics. For example, surfactants like detergents, emulsifiers, foaming agents, and dispersants. As a result, POPs can be found virtually everywhere on our planet in measurable concentrations, and that also means they're found in us. Our body has its own mechanisms for dealing with these toxins, which we'll cover later. Another result of our desire to experience food that is more attractive, available all year round, and more hardy is the extra pressure this puts on farming methods. In order to meet the demands, farmers pick crops earlier or use other methods like tree spraying to keep the fruit and vegetables healthier looking for longer. The end result of these changes in farming is that our soil, which has its own microbiome, has seen a huge drop in the nutrients that it can provide to the food that it grows. In 2008, a Swiss study looked at all of the main ingredients you would find in a salad back in 1970 and compared the nutritional depletion of each food item to determine how many ready-made salads you would need to eat to replicate the same level of nutrition. Can you guess how many salads would be needed? 5 perhaps, maybe 10, or 20, 30. It would take 47 salads with the same ingredients in 2008 to match the nutritional value of that salad back in 1970. And yet we still think we're being ultra healthy when we walk into the supermarket at lunchtime and grab that pre-made salad for lunch. Our lifestyle also has a major part to play. This is the kind of positive imagery that we see a lot of today, of entrepreneurs and office people working in completely fulfilling jobs, enjoying their work. But all too often, the reality is very different, with stress, a lack of exercise, and unhealthy snacking leading to many health problems, both mentally and physically. And the best way for me to illustrate this is to tell you my story. I entered the world of work back in the 1980s, wide-eyed at this fabulous new world, keen to make my mark. I took a job in the family business, as my grandfather worked for Imperial Airways and my father worked at BOAC. So I joined British Airways as a business analyst. I absolutely loved the job, which came with great travel opportunities, and I worked in several countries in my time there, including the US and Singapore. It was also the place I met and fell in love with and ultimately married my wife, Kim. I moved on from British Airways, and shortly after my first child was born, I was made redundant. This was probably the first major piece of stress that I had experienced in my work career. I took a number of jobs which meant longer and longer travel, more time away from home, and although the money was good, the quality of life was not. This photograph was taken in Geneva, Switzerland, where I had taken an initial 3-month contract to work for the United Nations, only to end up staying over a year, flying home every other weekend to see my family. In the end, they came and stayed with me, and this really made me and us determined to get back to the UK and get a normal job. The early 1990s were the time of the internet boom. And when I returned to the UK, I got a job with an internet startup in a fashionable area of London. The work was really, really exciting. And initially, the money was enough to cover our costs. And we were happy as a family again. But as the company grew, so did my role. And I was made Chief Technology Officer, looking after a company that had grown from 5 to almost 200 people in a very short space of time. And this brought new stress, managing to recruit so many people and making sure they were the right people. Also, there was lots of new investment and lots of new computer equipment to be installed. All of this meant that I was working 100-hour weeks, with Sundays sleeping on a couch in the office. The stress became larger and larger, but at this point I was still fairly healthy, so I kept going. Remember the continuum? Each day in itself was not impacting me so much, but the constant buildup was about to take its toll. At the end of the 1990s and in the beginning of the 2000s, the internet hype cycle crashed. Our company went from 200 people to only 15 towards the end. And I remember one day where I had to let 40 people go. It was absolutely soul destroying. I worked for almost a year with no salary. I remortgaged our house 3 times, all in the hope that we could turn around the business and get back on track. It didn't work and almost broke us as a family. It was 2006 and it was time to get a normal job again. So in 2006, I re-entered the world of corporate life that I had not really been a part of since leaving British Airways all those years ago. Life as a consultant and then as an internet entrepreneur had taught me a lot though, and I quickly found myself rising in the ranks in my new role. Here I am in 2007, head of research at one of the world's largest aerospace companies. I thought I was back to being a success, but my body had other ideas. That continuum was just about to catch up with me. As I progressed further up the ladder, I experienced moments of success, but I was also starting to experience moments of panic and stress as the demands of the job were becoming ever greater. It seemed that the more success I had, the further and faster I was being pushed, with no thought of how it would affect me. I look happy in this picture, and I was. I just opened a new research center. But you can see that I was starting to look more unhealthy. I was drinking too much, eating all of the wrong things, and putting on over 4 stone in weight in a fairly short space of time. I was suffering from gout, which made my constant traveling very difficult, especially all the walking required to and from terminals in airports. I spent most of my life in hotels or on aeroplanes, eating rich food with many sauces, the odd glass of wine, and making terrible nutritional choices. This photograph, taken in 2016 at an event I was keynote speaking at in front of 10,000 people, is really quite shocking to me when I see that now, not realizing then just what I was doing to myself. This is how I felt most of the time. I realized I was suffering from burnout. Now, the term burnout is fairly well defined in the dictionary as being exhausted through overwork, but I prefer the version from the Urban Dictionary, as I was certainly exhibiting many of these characteristics. My performance at work was going down. I was becoming more sarcastic towards the role, and I was certainly not healthy. My father died at 54 of cardiovascular disease, and I was doing my level best to emulate him. We spoke before about the fact that an imbalance in our gut microbiome can lead to us not producing the necessary level of hormones that we need. One such hormone is GABA, or GABA-aminobutyric acid. GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, which means that it weakens or slows down the signals through the brain and the nervous system. In this regard, GABA plays an important role in managing stress and anxiety. When nerve signals fire too quickly and carry anxiety or stress-inducing signals, GABA acts to slow the signals down, reducing the feeling of being overwhelmed. But when we do not produce enough GABA, we become more open to feelings of stress and anxiety, which in turn have been scientifically proven to damage our gut flora, making the imbalance in our microbiome even worse. This cycle of stress, microbiome imbalance, and stress can be hard to break. But what we do know is that rebalancing our microbiome can play a major part in helping to break the cycle. This diagram illustrates what psychologists call the burnout curve. I know that when I was feeling at my lowest, I was experiencing several of these stages, such as becoming more cynical, feeling unexplained rage towards others for no good reason, a loss of focus. Even though I was putting in a very high level of effort, I felt a lack of reward and higher expectations being placed on me. It's important to know, though, that there are things that we can do to help us reverse this burnout curve. The first of which is to identify that such a problem exists, which is not easy when, as a nation, for example, we are currently going through a very stressful few months. So it's easy to bury work-related stress inside the overall problems that we may be facing. Many of us are currently spending much of the day in front of a computer, attending daily meetings over video, and how many of us have become experts on Zoom and other webinar platforms recently. Taking time out, reconnecting with friends and family, setting more realistic expectations of ourselves, and other actions are all areas of mindfulness that can help reverse the burnout curve. And we can use our newfound knowledge of webinars and Zoom to utilize technology that has always in the past been work-related, to get together with friends and family. Many people are running online quizzes over webinars now, and there are many online resources to help you with this. But there is no doubt that getting your gut microbiome back towards a normal function enables you to deal better with stress and anxiety, helping to break the cycle of despair that we sometimes find ourselves in. I'm so grateful for my wife, Kim, who convinced me to change my path and rebalance my microbiome before it was too late to reverse the direction that my health was headed in. Let's talk a little bit about medication, something that I had started to rely on to help with my health. I was diagnosed as pre-diabetic, and I was told I would need statins for the rest of my life. Remember, my father died of heart disease at 54, and the doctors felt I was going to be on medication for the rest of my days. And as a society, we have a heavy reliance on medication. Whilst antibiotics are absolutely essential when we really need them, our overuse of them, as well as many other daily pharmaceutical medications, are causing massive problems for our gut. You know, antibiotics are well named. They are literally inhibiting and in some cases destroying our microorganisms, but they're not intelligent enough to be able to target only the bad bacteria. They wipe out good and bad alike. It's estimated that after just a 2-week course of antibiotics, your microbiome can take up to 6 months to rebalance if you do not help it with some kind of probiotic supplementation. So all of the things shown here can affect our microbiome. Let's look at what happens when our gut gets out of balance. In many cases, the first thing that happens is that the bad or negative bacteria begin to produce endotoxins. Endotoxins are lipopolysaccharides, which is a long name for a large molecule consisting of a lipid and a polysaccharide, and they're found in the outer membrane of gram-negative bacteria, or bad bacteria, as we've called them in this talk. Our endotoxins then travel to various parts of our body, causing inflammation and ultimately metabolic dysfunction in one or more of our core systems. For many people, the lining of the gut wall can become damaged. This lining, called the intestinal mucosal barrier, consists of a single layer of cells, and the junction between these cells are usually kept very tight, as shown in the left-hand side of this diagram. However, when bad bacteria attacks this gut lining, it can cause what doctors call intestinal permeability and what we know as leaky gut syndrome. People suffering from this syndrome can experience a range of conditions due to bacteria, toxins, and sometimes even undigested food passing through these leaky junctions and into our bloodstream. This then causes the body to react by trying to defend itself, causing systemic inflammation, which is the body's normal defense mechanism towards what it thinks is an attack. In 2010, neuroscientist Diego Bojorquez discovered that cells in the gut, which produce the hormones that spur digestion, suppress hunger, and many other functions, can send messages directly through the brain to the brain through our vagus nerve. In tests, they showed that these messages are sent faster than the blink of an eye, less than 100 milliseconds, before we even realized them. Ever wondered why you had that gut feeling, or that time you felt butterflies in your stomach? If you're suffering from leaky gut, however, these messages sent can also affect autoimmune diseases, anxiety, depression, foggy thinking, poor memory, and tiredness. So, just in case you haven't been paying attention for the last 20 or so minutes, here is a 2-minute summary of why the microbiome is so important for our health.
Evidence is mounting that the gut, which contains 70 to 80% of our immune tissue, could have an even greater impact on our overall health than once thought.
They say all health leads to and comes from the gut, don't they? And this is a massive deal.
So your gut is surprisingly clever because you have what's called the second brain down there.
The bacteria that live in your gut, your microbiome, as known as, trillions of them living in your gut, but have effect in all sorts of different systems in your body.
The microbiota is at the centre of so many different things. I think of it as sort of as a bicycle wheel, where the microbiota is the hub, and at the end of all the spokes is everything from irritable bowel syndrome to inflammatory bowel disease like Crohn's disease, right through even to perhaps the way that we behave.
Our guts, or rather what we put in them, get a lot of attention these days. Clean living celebrities and diet trends claiming what we eat influences our overall well-being, even our mental health.
Because we know that the microbes in your gut also help control your weight. They control your cravings. They send messages to your brain. The brain in your gut talks to the brain in your head and vice versa. It sends messages.
That's interesting.
So when you talk about, you know, having thinking with your gut, going with your gut, that is literally true. Your gut is talking to your brain and telling it stuff.
The brain-gut axis. We've been used to thinking about it as doctors as something where the brain controls the gut. And now there's emerging evidence that possibly the microbiota, the bacteria living in our gut, may well be influencing the brain. So it goes the other way too. And that's fascinating, I think, and that's new.
Gut health is all the rage these days, and that's because over the last 5 or 10 years we've started to realise that the health of our gut doesn't only affect our digestion, things like bloating and how we feel in our tummies. It affects our overall health and well-being as well.
Perhaps the most important thing here for me as a practicing doctor is the use of antibiotics. That if people realise what they were doing to their forgotten organ by taking antibiotics when they often don't need them, they would think twice.
We know that the microbes in your gut also teach your immune system how to behave.
Okay.
Which is a really weird thought. It's like your granny teaching the kids how to behave.
So what can we do to help ourselves? What can we do to get our microbiome back into shape? How do we know what the best nutrition is for us? Well, my background is scientific research, and I find that in order to make the best decision, I need to know all of the pieces of the jigsaw. And this is the reason why I'm so excited about the new scientific field of nutrigenetics, which has been hailed as taking the guesswork out of getting fit and healthy. There's a phrase used in nutrigenetics that's very relevant to my talk tonight, and that is that your genes load the gun, but it is your lifestyle that pulls the trigger. It's no secret that a balanced diet plays a vital role in health, and that unhealthy foods can cause considerable damage in the long run. However, it's not possible to make general dietary recommendations that are perfect for everyone. After all, what is healthy for one person may cause significant problems for another. And the reason for these individual differences lies in our genes, and the fact that not all of our genes are complete. Some have variations in, laying dormant until triggered by our lifestyle, going along that continuum, which then causes us health problems such as IBS, Crohn's, and others. We also now know that these genetic variations affect our nutritional requirements on a daily basis. This becomes clear, for example, with known metabolic problems such as lactose or gluten intolerance, but it's also important for a variety of other complaints. Nutrigenetics makes it possible to optimize individual nutrition by analyzing nutritionally relevant genes through a simple swab test. This can help identify potential metabolic problems and significantly improve your health. The results from your DNA test provide important information about individual strengths and weaknesses that influence the utilization of different nutrients, and it can also be taken into account when selecting the right foods for your body. Imagine knowing what nutrition works best for you. My results showed me that I have a faulty APOA1 gene. There's nothing I can do about it. Our genes never change. What it means for me is that if I was to take an omega-3 supplement, which many people do every day, it would have the opposite effect on me. It could actually raise my cholesterol, so I never need to buy it or take it. This kind of detail cannot be picked up by a simple omega test, as the fault is lying at a genetic level. Imagine the power in knowing which foods and supplements you should be buying to get the best out of your body, and which you don't need. Which foods react well with your genes, and which to avoid in case they trigger a dormant genetic defect. These ebooks have much more information about nutrigenetics, and they're available free. Just ask the person who invited you to this talk for copies. So we can use the science of nutrigenetics to find out exactly what foods are suited for us and our gut, but what can we do to help our gut get back to its optimal state now? I think it helps to imagine that you have just moved house and your gut is the garden in your new home. It needs bringing back to its best. The previous owner didn't really spend a lot of time looking after it, and it's got a lot of weeds in. Our guts, like the garden, need fertilizing, and this is done through taking prebiotics, which contain unique, non-digestible plant fibers such as inulin. Good examples would be in garlic, beans, onions, chicory root, asparagus, and other green leafy vegetables. The next step is to colonize our gut garden with probiotics, cultured or fermented foods that contain good bacteria like natural yogurt, kefir, pickles, certain types of cheeses. Enriching your garden with nutrients is absolutely essential. We call them purify-friendly foods. The next slide shows you just a selection of them. And as you can see, there's a great selection of foods that are very healthy for us to eat to help to get our guts back on track. And the last part is very important to the process, to remove any weeds, any toxins that have accumulated in the body. I mentioned previously about the body having its own mechanisms for protecting itself from toxins. And let me explain to you how it works. The body understands the dangers that these toxins present to it. So it calls in the troops, which are known to us as fat cells. Now, fat cells can surround toxins, providing a shield between them and our body, doing their job to protect ourselves. Unfortunately, if we diet without first removing the toxins, then the fat in the cells is burnt away as we lose weight, leaving the toxins free again to roam around our system and create more and more mischief. Now, this is one reason why we can sometimes feel unwell if we lose a lot of weight quickly, as we have no protection against these toxins. Of course, our body is clever. It knows what to do, create more fat. And what happens is we can suffer from yo-yo dieting, if we do not first remove the toxins. And yo-yo dieting has been proven to put our body under even more stress, which leaves us both deflated and unwell. If we make sure that we perform a cellular level detox first, then when the fat in the cells is removed as part of normal weight loss, there are very few toxins remaining that we need to protect ourselves from. So the body doesn't need to create new fat, leading to more energy and a more healthy muscle being built. Now, back in 2016, not many people outside of the scientific community were talking about our microbiome and how it affected our health. It certainly wasn't on TV or in the press like it is today. And we were intrigued about a new program called Purify, which had initially been developed in the research and innovation laboratories of Synergy Worldwide in Utah. Our heart-to-heart team decided to become one of the first trial groups in Europe. The results were simply staggering, and we are very proud to say that we have taken thousands of people successfully through the program since then. And although this is not a weight loss program, if you detox correctly using Purify, then both the toxins and the fat in the cells are eliminated from the body, resulting in weight loss from the toxic fat. And for many people who perform sports and exercise, either as a leisure activity or professionally, having a healthy gut microbiome gives you some serious benefits. Having a balanced gut microbiome enables nutrients to be absorbed better, as well as removing the things you don't want more effectively. This can result in an increased muscle mass, reduced recovery times, and has shown to be very beneficial in reducing inflammation in joints. The program itself enables you to gain a competitive edge, but with a clean performance boost. It's a 21-day program consisting of a high protein, high phytonutrient, low carbohydrate nutrition plan, as well as targeted nutritional supplementation, all of which have specific roles to play that I'll cover in a minute. Alongside this are light exercise guidelines, as in order to function at your best level, both you and your gut need exercise. We need to get you both moving in the right direction, so to speak. So, what do you get in the Purify kit to help you succeed and rebalance your microbiome? Well, all of the tools you need to help you start to detox your body at a cellular level, cleanse the pathways, and get you back to feeling your best. The first item in our armory is pro-arginine, which is the direct result of research that won the 1998 Nobel Prize for Medicine. Dr. Joe Prendergast took the research on combining L-arginine and L-citrinine to boost the production of nitric oxide in the body and formulated pro-arginine. In 2008, he was awarded Father of the Year by the US Diabetes Association in recognition of how many people he had helped. This formulation is quoted in the US Physician's Desk Reference as the highest, best quality L-arginine supplement in the world. And apart from its amazing cardiovascular helping properties, its job in Purify is to increase circulation. As the faster we can get our detoxing done and start taking in the right nutrients, the quicker and better we feel. Of course, it also acts as a very powerful blood circulation booster, so it has other benefits, shall we say. Our next powerful ally is Biome DT, which has been formulated to remove the heavy metals and other toxins, such as the POPs, from our system. The zinc in Biome DT helps to clean and soothe our digestive system, as well as supporting the detoxing function. High in inulin and glutamine, it also helps repair the gut lining, tightening those leaky junctions and stopping the endotoxins from sneaking into our bloodstream. To help our body repair itself and to start to get the right ratio of good guys to bad guys, Biome Shake is a great meal replacement, which you use for 1 week during the program. It has broccoli and zinc in to help with the detoxification and comes in a vanilla flavor that you can also add fruit to if you want to make a tasty smoothie on the go. Now we come to the foot soldiers, our troops of mass construction, colony-forming spores specifically chosen to survive the perilous journey down your digestive system and into their forward operating base, your gut. Many shop-bought pre- and probiotics may look and sound good, but they're simply not strong enough to survive the journey to the gut in order to do their job. These guys are, and they help your gut bacteria towards the correct ratio of good guys and bad guys. Now, lastly, and by that I mean the business end of the detox process, we have Body Prime. The purpose of detoxing is to eliminate things that you don't want from your body. Now, you have several choices of where things can exit and how they can exit, but I think most of us would like that process to be as easy and efficient as possible. And this is where Body Prime kicks in. With magnesium, apple and prune pectin, it just makes our body do what it needs to do in the best and gentlest way possible. So those are all of the tools that you need to succeed with Purify. And to help you, there is a 36-page guide to show you what you need to do and when you need to do it. It also gives advice on Purify-friendly foods, as well as a section on recipe ideas. We recommend starting with a lifestyle analysis session, which takes about half an hour, and it's a great way to see how you're functioning before the Purify program starts, so that we can determine the level of success the program has in each of your core body systems and where we need to target efforts. The program itself works in 3 phases: prepare, detox, and build. And each of the phases is fully documented in the Purify guide that you get with your program. Once the program is over, we redo your lifestyle analysis so that we can see the improvements that you've made. And it's one of the most fulfilling parts of the program when you realize the transformation in your core body systems. Across the thousands of people who have successfully done Purify, we see these typical results. Some people experience 2 or 3 or more of these, depending upon where their starting point was. Everybody is different. The person who invited you to this talk can point you towards some of the many testimonials that we've received from our happy purifiers since we began the program back in 2016. The entire program, including all of the nutritional supplements that you need, the 36-page guide, and both one-to-one support and online Purify community access, costs £195 and comes with a full 90-day money-back guarantee. If you're interested in the DNA aspects as well, we have an amazing offer at the moment of just £369 for both Purify and the full DNA analysis, including a 200-page personalized report covering nutritional recommendations, food intolerances, and sports and exercise guidance tailored to your genetic profile. The DNA test has a list price alone of over £400, so it's really a great offer at the moment. Well, I've almost come to the end of my talk, and I would like to thank you for staying with me until the end. There are many reasons why the Purify program can be truly transformational for your health. Each person is unique, and so is their microbiome. For me, all I can say that is I'm very glad that I did it, as it's transformed me from looking like this. And as you can see from the text at the bottom of this photo and the normal person in the background, this image is undoctored and quite frankly a bit scary. It was taken in 2015 when I was still trying to balance my successful corporate career with a very unhealthy lifestyle, to this in less than 2 years. I have also this year become older than my father managed. So if you are ready to start your Purify journey to help your health, talk to the person who invited you to see this talk. Ask them about the free lifestyle analysis that we're currently offering and the DNA ebooks that we have. If you would like to dig deeper into the science, how the products are made, or about Synergy Worldwide itself as a company and how they operate, then we're running a 35-minute webinar tomorrow at 7:30, which goes into greater detail. And again, talk to the person that invited you to this talk to get the Zoom link. You'll have to put up with me on that call again, I'm afraid, but that time I will be co-hosting it with my lovely wife, Kim, who was the one who convinced me to do the Purify program in the first place. So she knows exactly what she's talking about. Once again, I would like to thank you for your time tonight and wish you well. Goodbye.